Have you ever stopped to consider that the very sanctuary you retreat to each night, your bed, might be the silent stage where your body is being robbed of its future? As I sit here in my study, surrounded by the leather-bound journals of 30,000 patients I have treated over 3 decades, I am struck by a haunting realization. We spend 1/3 of our lives in the dark, and for many of you, those hours are not spent in healing, but in a slow, invisible decay. I remember a woman named Margaret who came to see me years ago. She was 75 and felt as though she were fading like an old photograph. She thought it was just the inevitable weight of time, but as a physician who has dedicated 50 years to the science of human longevity, I knew better. I have walked the halls of the most prestigious institutions, from the quiet research labs of Harvard to the bustling clinics of the Mayo Foundation, and the data is as clear as it is terrifying.
We are discovering that the way you position your frame tonight could be quietly aging your internal organs, stealing the rhythm from your heart, the clarity from your brain, and ultimately, the very independence you have worked a lifetime to maintain. It sounds like a plot from a medical thriller, doesn't it? The idea that a simple pillow or a habitual tilt of the spine could be a lethal architect. Yet, new clinical research from the National Institute on Aging confirms this grim reality. Certain sleeping positions can increase your risk of a devastating stroke, irreversible memory loss, and chronic bone-deep pain by more than 60%. This is the conversation that stays hidden behind closed doors. Most seniors are performing this dangerous ritual every single night, drifting off into a slumber that they believe is restorative, while their bodies are actually gasping for air and struggling against the tide of inflammation. For millions of older adults across this great nation, sleep has transformed from a peaceful shore into a turbulent sea. You know the feeling all too well. The constant tossing, the endless turning, waking up at 4 in the morning feeling more exhausted than when you laid your head down, your joints screaming in a language of soreness and stiffness. But what if I told you the true enemy isn't the duration of your rest, but the geometry of it? As a doctor who has witnessed the before and after of thousands of lives, I can tell you that your sleep position is a double-edged sword. It can be the greatest physician you ever hire, or the most patient assassin. It has the power to either soothe your weary joints, shield your spine like a suit of armor, and optimize the golden flow of blood to your vital organs. Or it can do the exact opposite. It can act as a silent strain on the most fragile parts of your anatomy, cutting off the oxygen that your brain desperately needs to process the memories of your grandchildren's faces. I have seen 80-year-olds regain the vitality of a 60-year-old simply by correcting their alignment, and I have seen strong men broken by a mattress that they refuse to master. Tonight, we are going to dive deep into a truth that might feel uncomfortable but is absolutely essential for your survival. I want to walk you through the 4 worst sleeping positions that you should never, under any circumstances, use after you cross the threshold of 60 years old. These are the habits that are quietly accelerating the wear and tear on your vertebrae like a branch being bent until it finally snaps. But I will not leave you in the dark. I will also share the 4 restorative positions, the sacred alignments that can bring back your energy, sharpen your memory like a polished blade, and help you wake up feeling as though the clock has been turned back 10 years. This isn't just a list of tips, this is a manifesto for your second youth. Stay with me, because what we are about to uncover is the bridge between a life of chronic fatigue and a life of vibrant independence. Before we step into the clinic of the night, I want you to realize that you are not alone in this struggle. Every time you feel that sharp twinge in your neck or that foggy cloud over your mind in the morning, remember that your body is communicating with you. It is begging for a change. I have spent my life listening to these whispers, and I have seen the miracles that happen when a patient finally decides to listen back. If you have ever felt that your best years were behind you because you were too tired to live, I am here to tell you that the sunrise is waiting for you. If you find these insights valuable, I ask you to join this community of healing. Subscribe to this journey and turn on the notifications so you never miss a lesson designed specifically for your longevity. If you are ready to reclaim your nights, I want you to type the number 1 in the comments below, letting me know you are standing with me in this fight. If not, type 0. Tell me how I can serve you better, because my mission is your health. We are about to embark on a journey that will change the way you look at your bed forever. Let us begin with the first hard truth, the 4 worst positions that are currently sabotaging your golden years. I remember the day Arthur Miller walked into my clinic in Columbus, Ohio. At 72 years old, Arthur was a man whose hands had once whispered to wood, crafting furniture that would last for generations. But when he sat across from me, those hands were trembling, a fine, persistent quiver that broke my heart. He looked at me with eyes clouded by a fear that many seniors know but few dare to voice. "Doctor," he whispered, his voice cracking like dry timber, "I'm losing my steady grip. I think my brain is fading, or maybe my nerves are just dying." He was terrified of Parkinson's, terrified of becoming a burden to the grandchildren he loved so dearly. But as I began my examination, moving my hands along the rigid, corded muscles of his neck, I realized the culprit wasn't a mysterious disease. It was his bed. Arthur confessed that for 50 years he had only been able to fall asleep by lying flat on his stomach, arms tucked under his pillow, face pressed hard into the mattress. He felt safe there, hidden from the world, but he didn't realize that every night was a slow-motion car crash for his cervical spine. When you lie face down for hours, you are forced to turn your head at a sharp 90-degree angle just to breathe. For someone like Arthur, this wasn't just a comfort, it was a nightly strangulation of his own vitality. I explained to him that this unnatural twist was cutting off the critical blood flow through the vertebral arteries, the very pipes that feed the brain's oxygen supply. Clinical data from the American Chiropractic Association suggests that this position creates a 60% higher risk of cervical misalignment, a condition that can lead to chronic vertigo, debilitating headaches, and that terrifying tingling in the fingertips that Arthur mistook for a death sentence. By pressing his chest into the mattress, he was also suffocating his lungs. His diaphragm, the engine of his breath, was being crushed, forcing his body into shallow, frantic gasps throughout the night. For a man over 70, this means less oxygen reaching the heart, driving up blood pressure, and leaving the brain in a state of foggy exhaustion that mimics the onset of dementia. I showed Arthur his x-rays, pointing to the delicate vertebrae of his neck, which looked like a branch that had been bent too many times. Dr. Emily Rhodes, a renowned geriatric specialist, often calls this the most aging position known to medicine because it accelerates the wear and tear of spinal discs at an alarming rate. It was a silent strain, a thievery of his independence that happened while he dreamed. I told him, "Arthur, you aren't sick. You are just being broken by the way you rest." The interior monologue of a man who spent his life building things was one of self-blame, but I needed him to see that healing was within his reach. We talked about how his body was crying out for a neutral alignment, a way to breathe without struggle. It was a moment of profound realization for him. The safety he felt in his childhood habit was actually the very thing stealing the steady hands he needed to build his legacy. We began the journey of retraining his nervous system, teaching him that his bed should be a sanctuary of repair, not a place of slow structural decay. Eleanor Bennett was a woman of quiet grace, a retired librarian from Ann Arbor who had spent her life surrounded by the wisdom of the ages. But when she came to see me at 68, that grace was being replaced by a troubling stoop and a persistent heavy fatigue. She described her nights to me with a sense of nostalgic comfort. "I curl up into a tight little ball, Sanjay," she said, her voice soft and defensive. "It makes me feel safe, like I'm cradling myself against the cold." To Eleanor, the fetal position was a psychological shield, but to my medical eyes, it was a trap that was slowly suffocating her. I had to look into those weary eyes and tell her a hard truth. Her cozy habit was quietly robbing her of the very air she needed to survive. When you pull your knees toward your chest in that tight curl, you are effectively putting your internal organs into a vice. According to research from the National Sleep Foundation, this extreme flexion of the body compresses the diaphragm and restricts lung expansion by nearly 40%. For an older adult whose lung tissue is already losing its youthful elasticity, this subtle drop in oxygen is catastrophic. It triggers a cascade of morning headaches, chronic fatigue, and a subtle strain on the heart muscle that must work twice as hard to circulate what little oxygen remains. But the damage went deeper than her breath. By keeping her spine in an unnatural C shape for 8 hours a night, Eleanor was shortening the ligaments and muscles that allowed her to stand tall. My colleague, Dr. Leonard Hayes, a spine specialist with over 30 years of experience, warns that for seniors, sleeping too curled up is like teaching your body to shrink.
I saw it in Eleanor's posture, the way she was beginning to look toward the ground rather than the horizon, her stability wavering, her risk of a life-altering fall increasing with every passing month.
Eleanor's story is a warning for every one of us who seeks comfort in the familiar. Her internal monologue was one of self-protection, but the medical reality was one of self-restriction. She was shocked when I explained that her morning grogginess wasn't a sign of aging, but a sign of nighttime oxygen deprivation. We discussed the clinical evidence showing that prolonged spinal flexion can lead to permanent changes in bone density and muscle memory. Eleanor, I said, you are not just sleeping. You are teaching your body to stay in a state of fear. The realization brought tears to her eyes, a mixture of grief for her lost energy and hope for a future where she could breathe deeply again. We began to work on unfurling her body, moving away from the trap and toward a posture that allowed her lungs to bloom like the garden she used to tend. It was a journey of reclaiming her stature and her strength, one night at a time. Robert Callahan, whom everyone called Sarge, was a 74-year-old veteran from Sarasota, Florida. He was a man of steel and discipline, and he carried that military precision into his bedroom. He slept like a soldier, perfectly flat on his back, arms straight at his sides, head barely resting on a thin pillow. He believed this was the ultimate sign of a healthy spine. But the man who stood before me was a shadow of the hero he once was. His wife Mary came with him, her face etched with a terror I see all too often. "Doctor," she said, clutching his hand. "He stops breathing. In the middle of the night, there's this horrible silence, and then he gasps like he's drowning." Robert looked embarrassed, a proud man defeated by a battle he couldn't see. The diagnosis was clear but devastating: severe obstructive sleep apnea, directly caused by his disciplined sleeping position. When a senior lies flat on their back without support, gravity becomes a merciless enemy. It pulls the tongue and the soft tissues of the throat backward, effectively sealing the airway. For Robert, this was happening up to 30 times every single hour. According to the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, untreated apnea in adults over 60 increases the risk of a fatal heart attack or a massive stroke by more than 60%. Every time Robert stopped breathing, his blood pressure would skyrocket, his heart straining against the lack of oxygen, and his brain cells dying off in the silence. This position was also fueling a silent reflux, where digestive acid crept up into his esophagus, burning his vocal cords and damaging his lungs. The man was literally being poisoned by his own stomach acid and suffocated by his own tongue, all because he thought flat meant healthy. I had to be blunt with him. "Robert, your bed is a battlefield where you are currently losing." We looked at the data together. The clinical evidence showing that lying flat worsens acid reflux in nearly 50% of adults over 65. His fatigue, his increasing forgetfulness, and his stubborn high blood pressure were all symptoms of this nightly struggle. He had spent years thinking he was resting, but his body was in a state of emergency from midnight until dawn. The psychological toll was immense. He felt old and broken, not realizing that his soldier posture was the very thing breaking him. We had to rethink his entire approach to rest, moving away from the rigid discipline of the past and toward a supported, elevated alignment that would allow his airway to remain a highway for life-giving air. It was a lesson in humility for a veteran, learning that true strength sometimes means allowing yourself to be supported. Dorothy Higgins was 79 years old and lived among the red rocks of Sedona, Arizona. After losing her husband, her large bed felt like an empty ocean, and she found solace in a plush velvet recliner in the living room. "It cradles my aching hips, Dr. Gupta," she told me with a weary smile. "I just pull the lever, turn on the news, and drift off." But the Dorothy who sat in my exam room was struggling. Her ankles were swollen to twice their normal size, and her lower back was so stiff she could barely walk to her mailbox. I recognized the signs immediately: the recliner habit, a growing epidemic among seniors who mistake a semi-upright position for therapeutic rest. I had to tell her that her beloved chair was quietly undermining her circulation and her lifespan. Dr. Michael Turner, a specialist in geriatric rehabilitation, has documented the dangers of sleeping in a recliner for prolonged periods. Because the body remains in a semi-sitting position, blood flow to the legs is severely restricted. For Dorothy, this meant fluid retention and a terrifyingly high risk of deep vein thrombosis, blood clots that can travel to the lungs and kill in an instant. Furthermore, the partially upright angle prevents the spine from ever reaching a state of full relaxation. Her hip and abdominal muscles were slowly weakening, a process that leads to balance issues and a much higher risk of life-altering falls. But perhaps the most hidden danger was the lack of deep sleep. Clinical studies show that the reclined position often prevents the body from entering the glymphatic wash, the deep restorative phase where the brain flushes out metabolic waste linked to Alzheimer's. Dorothy was living in a state of constant light rest, her brain never truly healing, her muscles never truly recovering. "I thought I was resting," she whispered, a tear rolling down her cheek, but I was slowly shutting down. The emotional weight of her loneliness had driven her to the chair, but the physical weight of the chair was taking her health. I explained that she didn't have to suffer in her big bed, but she did have to leave the recliner. We discussed how prolonged sitting, even while sleeping, can shorten life expectancy by compromising heart health and metabolic function. Dorothy's journey back to health required her to reclaim her bedroom and learn how to position her body for true horizontal recovery. It was a difficult transition, a move away from the comfort of the living room and back to the science of real sleep, but it was the only way to save her life. After seeing so much damage, it is a joy to share the story of Mr. Allen, a 71-year-old retired firefighter from North Carolina. Allen was a man used to action, but he was being sidelined by a dull, persistent ache in his lower back and hips. "Every morning feels like I've been hit by a truck, Doc," he told me, his face lined with the frustration of a man who wanted to be active but couldn't. He was already sleeping on his side, which is a good start, but he was doing it wrong. His knees were pressed together, twisting his pelvis and putting a massive strain on his lumbar spine. I introduced him to the alignment saver, a simple, soft pillow placed gently between the knees. It sounds too simple to be medicine, but for a body over 60, it is a transformation. There is deep science behind this adjustment. Research from the Cleveland Clinic confirms that side sleeping, particularly on the left side, is a powerhouse for senior health. It promotes superior blood flow to the heart and keeps the stomach positioned below the esophagus, which naturally reduces acid reflux by 70%. But the pillow between the knees is the secret key. It keeps the hips, pelvis, and spine in a perfect neutral line. For Allen, this meant that the twisting force that had been inflaming his joints for a decade was finally gone. Within just 14 days of this simple change, Allen walked into my office with a spring in his step I hadn't seen before. "It's like my body finally exhaled," he said, beaming. He was no longer waking up hit by a truck. He was waking up ready to live. As a physician, I have seen this alignment saver work where expensive physical therapy failed. It minimizes the joint inflammation that leads to morning stiffness and protects the delicate curves of the aging spine. Doctors call this position the savior of the spine because it mimics the body's natural architecture. For those with sleep apnea, it is also a life-saving choice, as gravity helps keep the airway open rather than closed. I watched Allen's blood pressure stabilize and his mood lift as the chronic pain receded. This wasn't a drug, it was just geometry. I told him that his body had a remarkable capacity to heal itself, provided he gave it the right support. It is a lesson for every senior. Sometimes the most profound medical breakthroughs don't come in a bottle, but in a simple pillow placed with intention. Linda was a 73-year-old retired teacher from California who had spent her life nurturing others, but she was failing to nurture herself. She struggled with a terrifying shortness of breath that visited her every night. "I wake up coughing, Sanjay, and my throat feels like it's on fire," she told me, her voice raspy. She was terrified it was lung cancer or heart failure. I looked at her medical history and realized that while her heart was strong, her sleeping position was her enemy. She was lying flat, allowing stomach acid to burn her esophagus and allowing her airway to narrow. I introduced her to the elevated back sleeper position, raising her upper body by about 30 degrees using a firm wedge and placing a small, supportive pillow under her knees. Science explains the miracle that Linda experienced. By elevating the head and chest, we allow gravity to work for the body instead of against it. The American Academy of Sleep Medicine notes that seniors who sleep at this slight incline experience far fewer episodes of snoring and oxygen desaturation. This prevents the nighttime oxygen drops that can strain the heart and lead to long-term brain damage. Meanwhile, the pillow under the knees tilted her pelvis just enough to release the tension in her lower back, allowing her muscles to finally enter a state of deep relaxation. "It's not about sleeping longer, Linda," I told her. "It's about sleeping smarter." Within a week, the fire in her throat was gone, and she was sleeping through the night without a single coughing fit. I remember the light in her eyes when she realized she wasn't dying of old age. She was just sleeping at the wrong angle. This position is a powerful tool for anyone with heart issues or respiratory struggles. It gives the heart and lungs the physical room they need to function at peak efficiency while the rest of the body repairs itself. Dr. Raymond Cho, a cardiologist colleague, often tells his patients that elevation is the best non-pharmacological treatment for nocturnal hypertension. Linda regained her energy, her voice lost its rasp, and she began to enjoy her retirement again. Her story is a testament to the power of smart sleep. By giving your body the right angles, you are giving yourself the gift of a longer, more vibrant life. There is a sense of profound liberation in the starfish position, a posture I recommended to a retired nurse named Miss Linda from Minnesota. At 69, after decades of standing on hard hospital floors, her shoulders were a mess of knots and her neck was perpetually stiff. "I wake up feeling like I'm 85, Dr. Gupta," she said, rubbing her aching neck. She had been sleeping in a cramped, protective posture that was only making things worse. I suggested she try the starfish, lying on her back, arms spread gently to the sides, palms up, with a contoured pillow supporting the natural curve of her neck. It is a position of total surrender, and for the aging body, it is a nature's reset button.
When the arms are open and the shoulders are not compressed under the torso, blood flow to the upper spine and the nerves of the hands is vastly improved. Harvard Medical School's sleep division has found that this posture significantly reduces tension headaches and prevents nerve impingement, the leading cause of that annoying numbness and tingling that plagues so many seniors. For Linda, the change was almost immediate. By allowing her chest to remain open, she was also facilitating a deeper, more rhythmic style of breathing that lowered her nighttime cortisol levels. She told me, "For the first time in years, I woke up without feeling my age." She was no longer waking up clenched. She was waking up opened. The starfish position is about more than just physical relief. It's about a psychological shift from protection to peace. When you open your arms to the world, your nervous system receives a signal of safety. This lowers blood pressure and helps soothe a heart that may be weary from the stresses of the day. I watched as the lines of pain on Linda's face softened over the weeks. She was a nurse who had spent her life caring for others, and finally, she was allowing her bed to care for her. This position is a powerful remedy for the upper body age that we often accept as inevitable. It proves that with the right posture, we can release the weight of the world every single night and wake up with a body that feels light, capable, and renewed. Walter Henderson was 78 and had spent 40 years behind the wheel of a long-haul truck. His body was a map of the road, stiff hips, a bad back, and a digestive system wrecked by years of coffee and highway food. He had tried everything, expensive mattresses, upright recliners, every pill on the shelf. "Nothing works, Doc," he said, his voice heavy with the exhaustion of a man who hadn't had a good night's sleep since the 1990s. I suggested the 45-degree side recline, a position that geriatric specialists call the sweet spot of senior sleep. We used a firm wedge to support him at a 45-degree angle on his left side, with a pillow between his knees and another beneath his head to keep everything in a perfect painless line. The science behind Walter's recovery is nothing short of miraculous. According to the Journal of Geriatric Sleep Studies, this specific posture can reduce acid reflux by up to 70% and is the most effective way to keep the airway open for those with mild sleep apnea. But for Walter, the most important benefit was the lymphatic drainage. Research shows that this elevated, angled position allows the body to flush out toxins from the brain more efficiently, a process directly linked to preventing cognitive decline and memory loss. Within just 1 week, Walter's sleep tracker, which usually showed a mess of light sleep and awake periods, showed long, beautiful cycles of deep, restorative rest. He woke up clear-headed for the first time in decades. "I thought I was just done, Sanjay," he told me. "I thought this was just what 78 felt like." But it wasn't. It was what unsupported 78 felt like. This position provided the ultimate balance of comfort and clinical benefit. It protected his heart, soothed his spine, and gave his brain the wash it so desperately needed. Walter began to regain his independence, taking long walks in the North Carolina woods that he had previously been too tired to attempt. This sweet spot is a nightly act of preservation. It is a way to tell your body that the journey isn't over yet. For any senior living with arthritis or the lingering effects of a hardworking life, this position is the bridge to a vibrant future. Walter wasn't done. He was just getting started. As I sit here reflecting on the 30,000 stories I have heard, I want you to understand something fundamental. Sleep is not merely a pause in your day. It is the very foundation of your life. As we grow older, every night becomes a sacred opportunity for healing, a chance for the body to repair the damage of time and the heart to find its steady rhythm once again.
You have heard the stories of Arthur, Eleanor, Robert, Dorothy, and Walter. These are not just case studies. They are mirrors. Their pain was real, but so was their recovery. The truth is as simple as it is powerful. Your body is listening to you while you sleep. When you lie the wrong way, you are whispering decay to your joints and suffocation to your heart. But when you sleep in alignment, supported, elevated, and balanced, you are whispering life. I have seen miracles happen in the quiet of the night. I have seen 80-year-olds reclaim their sharp minds and their steady hands simply by changing the geometry of their rest. My final advice to you is this. Tonight, don't just go to bed. Create a sanctuary. If you are a back sleeper, raise your head and support your knees. If you prefer your side, place that pillow between your legs and tilt your body to the left. If you feel the weight of the world on your shoulders, try the Starfish. These small, inexpensive changes, a pillow here, a wedge there, are more powerful than many of the prescriptions I have written. They are the keys to your independence, the guardians of your memory, and the protectors of your heart.
I want you to act tonight. Don't wait for the pain to get worse or the fatigue to become a fog you can't escape. Reach into your linen closet, find that extra pillow, and start your journey toward healing. You have worked a lifetime to reach these golden years. Don't let a bad sleeping position steal them from you. Your best years can still begin with tomorrow's sunrise, but only if you give your body the rest it deserves tonight. I want you to wake up tomorrow and feel the strength returning to your limbs and the clarity returning to your mind. You are worth the effort. Your health is your most precious asset, and it is built one night at a time.
If this journey we've taken today has touched your heart or opened your eyes, I invite you to join our community. Please subscribe to this channel and hit the notification bell so we can continue this path of healing together. We are thousands of souls, all striving to live our best, most authentic lives, and your presence makes us stronger. Share this story with someone you love, perhaps a friend who is waking up tired or a sibling who is struggling with pain. Let us support each other on this journey toward health and vitality. Leave a comment below and tell me which change you are going to make tonight. I read your stories, and they inspire me to keep searching for the truths that heal. Sleep well, live well, and remember, the dawn is coming, and it is beautiful.